It is the Next Level Wrestling Review. We're talking Super Tuesday 2. And wait a second. This Colin, you've changed. You look different here. You're not Colin at all, are you?
Yeah, I've put a little bit of weight on.
Is it Colin? Colin's trying to play hooky and thought he could just play the old switch out, but you are the one, the only Old Athers here joining us. But I'm glad to have you here, breaking down NXT segment by segment, talking what business got done. Was it good? Was it bad? Was there anything that could have been improved? Because we have the utmost respect for these athletes who give their bodies each and every week, and we just want to see them make the most of their opportunities, get the most over, get the most heat, and make the most out of their careers. And we're here to break down Super Tuesday 2, which was a busy show. We were just talking off the air. You were commenting it was a lot of business.
As far as getting things done, it was a pretty good episode.
Absolutely. I thought so too. And granted, there's always opportunities, and we'll break into that. But, just on a whole, I thought it kept me intrigued throughout the show. I felt like before anything got to be too redundant or long, it was already moving on to the next thing. So I thought as a show, it flowed very well. But before we get into the review, Athers, we always, before we do that, have to turn in homework. Each and every week we have a homework assignment, and I just so happens I have the emails here. Now it's up to you. Do you want me to read your assignment, or do you want to talk it over yourself?
Oh, no, that's fine. You read it out. That's absolutely fine. Right. Obviously didn't know I'd be on the show while you were reading it out, but
Right. I'm putting you on the spot here. So we have Athers' email here. So the last week's homework, I guess, to start off, was simply this week we had Adam Cole and Finn Balor for the NXT Championship, and I wanted to know who was your pick to win and who was the first feud to go against. And Athers, looks like you said, sorry for the lack of homework last week, wasn't big leaguing you. I don't know, Athers, you're always big leaguing. But I digress. I just genuinely didn't know how to keep Karrion Kross relative during his absence. And it truly was a difficult assignment. There's no easy way. I mean, there's the reason why when people are injured, they usually don't keep them relevant throughout the injury, because there really isn't a good way. The idea I had, I still think could work, but I mean, that's one of those things that you can only do, once in a blue moon. And that was having Karrion Kross do kind of like the Sting treatment and having him come out and just kind of watching over months until he finally ran into the ring and murdered someone. Not literally, of course. In fact, I probably wouldn't mention him at all. And I agree. If they don't do anything, is keep it a surprise. WWE announces too much stuff these days. A surprise return from Kross would be cooler anyway. And I agree with that. On to this week's homework. I think Finn Balor will win the NXT Championship. Got that one. And if he does, his first feud should be with AJ Styles. You're all about pushing this AJ Styles in NXT, aren't you, Athers?
I just think he'd be a good fit there. I really do. I mean, I kind of see him as the third wheel in the current Intercontinental title feud that's going over on SmackDown with Jeff Hardy and Sami Zayn. I just think that with AJ winding down, I think it'd be a cool thing just for him to, stop by in NXT for a while, because he could have matches with loads of great guys over there.
And I don't disagree. I think sometimes you have these veteran wrestlers that, after you've been on the main roster for a while, you kind of get jaded. And especially, I'm sure, playing the political games and stuff, it takes the joy out of wrestling. And I've been in situations where, it becomes more political than fun, and it's not a good place to be. So, I would think, and I'm not saying that is going on right now with AJ Styles, but I am saying if he gets to that point and makes a move to NXT for a little bit, sometimes I think something like that can really rejuvenate when some of these veteran wrestlers, being around younger talent who are hungry and want to learn and want to put on the best performances possible. And, sometimes that can help to revitalize, a veteran wrestler's career. Like I feel like Finn Balor's having a lot of fun in NXT right now.
Yeah, exactly.
AJ Styles, I think certainly I would love to see him in there with, Adam Cole and Johnny Gargano and Tommaso and all those guys. I think, they'd have some incredible matches. So I think that's actually a good pick. And I think it would help the NXT roster to step up their game. I've long said, you can watch all the wrestling you want and do all the training you want, but truly the only way to get better as a wrestler is to get in the ring and wrestle better wrestlers. I was fortunate early in my career to have had a chance to work with a lot of veteran wrestlers, and that was the only reason why it helped me get better. learning from Rip and training with Rip was great. Learning under Al and Jim Cornette and everyone else, but actually getting in the ring with guys like Mike Mondo and Joey Mercury and Nick Dinsmore and Rob Conway, that is what helped me step up my game. So having someone like AJ Styles on the roster at NXT, tearing it up with these guys, I think would not only be I think, rejuvenating for him, I think it would also help everyone else in NXT to step up their game as well, to have some veteran talent back there. Your email does go on to say that I'll probably look like an idiot now if Cole has won, but hey-ho. Well, you don't look like an idiot. And even if you had picked him, you know, it is what it is. It all is based on the stories that they're trying to weave in. And that's where, you know, sometimes, you know, I try not to be quick to criticize when a booking decision happens, because I truly want to wait and see how the story plays out. Maybe I'm wrong. And I will say in a lot of circumstances, you know, sometimes my gut instinct was correct, but at the same time, there's also, I think, been plenty of times, and I'm sure you probably could agree on this, where you think something's going to go one direction, but then they end up swerving a different direction and it ends up being really good. So that's where I always try to at least take a step back, and sometimes on the surface, there's more than meets the eye. So it looks like, though, we were correct in that they are going on with Finn Balor. I think he's going to be a great torchbearer for NXT right now, especially in Karrion Kross's absence. And I think it'll be. I think he'll make a good champion. And same thing with AJ Styles. I think he'll help elevate the rest of the roster with the guys that have an opportunity to work. So good. I give you an A on your homework, Athers. But we got one more, I guess, assignment to go through from our good friend Hans. And Hans goes on to say, gents, how are we on this hot as fuck summer night? The other day it was 112 here in Cali. Wow. Are you guys in hot areas? And actually, it has been pretty hot here in Kentucky. In Kentucky here, it's not so much, well, it is the heat, because we get up to the 80s and 90s, but it's the humidity. And that will turn up the heat index to where, you know, it might be 90 degrees, but it feels like 100 and something degrees here, because the humidity or the moisture in the air, just it literally almost feels like a sauna over here. How is it over there in the UK? How's it feeling?
Well, because we're weird, we do it in centigrade, not Fahrenheit. So my conversions aren't going to be spot on, but
all right. Well, let's hold on. That's why we got Google, man. Let me see.
Around about 60 degrees.
60 degrees Celsius or Fahrenheit?
Oh, all God, right. If it was Celsius, I'd be melting. Yeah, Fahrenheit.
Okay. What is it in Celsius over there?
About 15, 16. Like, not cold, but not warm either. Summer's over now. We had our...
Okay, yeah, and that's about 60.
Two or 3 weeks of nice weather in the UK, and then it rains the rest of the time.
I digress here. I want to get back to what Hans was saying. He says, I feel Finn Balor is going to be the guy to come out with that lame sling blade into that crazy double stomp that has got to hurt like hell, finally hitting the 1916 DDT. Almost got it right.
Not far off.
Yeah.
Not far off at all.
Hit it from the top. He says the first feud, I believe, will be with either Velveteen Dream, because they love rewarding bad behavior, or the thick boy Bronson Reed. He seems to be getting some kind of soft push. They played the vignette, getting everyone to feel the plight of his journey. Yeah, you asked for one, but I am hedging my bet. Giving a favorite in a long shot? No, I do not gamble a lot. I do not think they will put the belt on either of them, though. This is not a hot potato title, obviously, with tiny Adam Cole holding it forever. Additionally, I do not feel too bad because old John Athersman did not email last week either. However, I had a similar idea to Colin's. Just have Cross be in the background like they were having with Loomis, except be more mystical. Have the target get a chill and look around, and Cross vanishes. Cross or Scarbo leaving cards or notes in the locker room or on folks' cars, and after they read them, they burn like the contract or just turn to dust. They can do that kind of shit behind the scenes and add CGI to it, even having Scarlett come down to the ring, circle it, and then leave. No contact, no words, show, don't tell. Appreciate the new direction of the show. Thanks, Hans. Always glad to hear from you, Hans. So, Athers, I'll give you the first crack. What are your thoughts? And there is no wrong answer, but what do you think about either it being Velveteen Dream or Bronson Reed?
Definitely be on board with Bronson Reed. I think that'd be like you say, because the first challenger doesn't tend to win. So, yeah, I think Bronson Reed. The one thing I'm slightly confused with, and I was confused during the match, was the heel-face dynamic in that match. It felt like they were both kind of tweeners in the Cole Balor match. So,
did you see the post-match promo they did with Adam Cole?
I saw them shaking hands and Too Sweetin in the back, and I also saw Cole's little promo. Cole seemed a lot more humble, down to earth. Obviously, he lost, so he's not going to be giving it the big I am. But yeah, he seemed a lot more leaning towards face than heel.
I agree, and it seems very much that they are potentially, again, I could always be wrong, but it does seem like they are leading towards turning him into a baby face, which I don't know how you feel. I personally am okay with it, but that's only because I feel like he's, from what I understand, been a heel for so long. It's always nice to have a fresh change. How would you feel about an Adam Cole face turn, or do you feel they should keep him a heel?
If you did do the face turn, you'd have to have Undisputed Era turn on him, because you can't really be a face leading a faction that's always interfering in your matches.
True. Although we did see, interestingly, I don't know if you remember this a couple of weeks ago, I believe, when they had Kyle O'Reilly face Drake Maverick, and they brought the chairs in. It seemed like Kyle O'Reilly was kind of against them jumping. What would be interesting, I'm not saying they are going to do that. What if it ended up being a rift or a split, and say you have Adam Cole and Kyle O'Reilly break off as the baby faces, interestingly, because they weren't, the tag team, and then having Bobby Fish and Roderick Strong breaking off as the heels, potentially. That would be an interesting change up. And I think if they did it correctly, and continue to build this rift and show through their characters, the rift starts to develop and become more and more entrenched between them. I think that could be interesting.
If I was going to do it, I'd do it with Cole and Strong being the good guys, because I think keeping the established tag team of Fish and O'Reilly would probably work a lot better. Who knows at this point? It was very interesting to see both the behaviour of Finn and Cole after that match, because both of them have certainly been heelish up and towards last week's Fatal 4-Way, and I don't know, maybe both guys, maybe with Cross being out injured, they're just switching roles around slightly. I don't know.
Yeah, and they could be trying to see, maybe tease certain things and seeing if it gains traction, and then if it doesn't, they can always, double back. You just don't want to go too far into a story and then be stuck, because they keep building, stuff like this. But yeah, it was interesting, and it did make me think that they are leaning towards turning him babyface, but time will tell, certainly. I will say I did like Hans's idea of like the notes or the cards and either setting fire, turning into dust. That would be something, as we've seen, he's not afraid to play with fire. And so that would be an interesting way to also keep him relevant. The only thing I would say, and this goes with my idea too, is doing it for an extended period. You just have to make sure it's done in a way to where you're not doing it too often, so it doesn't get stale. And when you do it, finding little different ways to do it, so that way it stays fresh. So whether it's fire, dust, or even just different objects or things like that, maybe even he's in a mirror, someone turns around and he's gone. I think there is a way to do it, but again, it all comes down also to the timetable. If he's going to be out for a really long time, it's harder and harder to keep that relevance versus with this type of injury. It can sometimes be a shorter term injury. I'm always big on making sure you're fully rehabbed before you return, though, because there's nothing worse than making a comeback and then being right back on the shelf. Not to mention, every time with a separated shoulder, every time that shoulder separates again, you're at increased risk for it happening again. And so more reason why I hope he does take his time and wait till he's fully recovered, because if you come back too soon, again, if he separates that shoulder again, then that is going to be a problem, because then, again, you've let it happen again, and now you're at even bigger risk, even if you fully rehab, for that to happen again. So hopefully he does have a speedy recovery, but more importantly, a full and complete recovery before he makes his way to the ring, and certainly wish him the very best. It's a shame what happened. I think he's one of the most intriguing talents I've seen around in this day and age, especially just he kind of has that mystique similar to really the biggest one I could compare it to is like an Undertaker type character, just, that the kind of mysterious, mythical, almost supernatural type character. And I look forward to seeing more of that, hopefully upon his return, which hopefully will be sooner rather than later. But again, just more importantly, making sure he's completely healthy when that happens. Well, thank you, Hans, for the homework. And of course, tune in to the end of the show where we will always have another homework assignment. But I digress. Let's get into some wrestling, some good old wrestling. Do you all ever say wrestling in England or no? Is that just a Southern States thing?
We do. We could say wrestling. We could also say graps.
Graps? Really?
Graps.
That's what you all call it sometimes?
Grappling.
I like that. That's like a shorthand way to say wrestling. Yeah, grappling. Yeah, I like that. Graps. Well, let's get into some graps on NXT. We started the show with a video recap reminding us that they ended a fatal 4-way Iron Man match in a draw. I didn't get a chance to hear your opinion. What was your opinion on that? The fatal 4-way that ended in a draw. Did you like that? Did you find it was intriguing, or did you feel let down by the finish?
I couldn't understand why they did it, but if I'd sat down and watched an hour where they're going to crown a new champion, they've been advertising crowning a new champion, only for them to not crown a new champion, I'd have been furious.
Right. It's like you set the audience expectation and more or less made a promise. If you tune into our show, this is what you're going to see. And then you invest an entire hour of emotional investment into the contest only to not get the conclusion that you were promised by the end of it. And I haven't seen the ratings review, but that's going to be the biggest tell. If the ratings are down, then undoubtedly it was because of that. If they're up, and I will look it up between now and then, I'll admit I was wrong then, but there is the big part of me that feels like when you make a commitment to an audience, you have to deliver. And so what I was saying last week is I almost feel like they should have done maybe a 30-minute version, and then they could have had Cole and Finn Balor, go until there's a winner. But that being said, we start off the show with this contest. And I do like that. I almost feel like I would have put that over more, like we're going to open the show with the championship. Maybe they did. I just didn't see it. But I thought it was good because then as a viewer, at least we know, okay, we're going to get a finish. And thank goodness they didn't do any kind of swerve or anything like that, because I had that in the back of my head too. Like, are they going to swerve us at the end of this? Because if so, then that would have been really bad. But at least they did deliver on.
Yeah, they literally picked up where they left off last week, which was good.
Right. So yes, and I do like that when the last thing you saw on the program is the first thing that gets addressed on the next show. And so that I like that continuancy, and I do like that they had the video recap on the front end to either re-educate the fans that watch or to educate new fans that were tuning in to watch. And then these guys, let me see how long they went for. A good bit of time here. It looks like in total, and thanks, I didn't say, I'm getting these results from 411 Mania. I always like to put over where we get the results. Apparently the match lasted 23 minutes and 11 seconds with Finn Balor winning after hitting the 1916 DDT from the top rope. Well, I guess we know what the business is. I don't think we need to say what was the business here. Was to obviously crown a new NXT champion. I guess going into the match itself, how did you like the match? Did this keep your attention? Did this keep you entertained throughout the match?
Yeah, I mean, I think what I liked about it was how the commentators got involved. I mean, you had a bit where Balor hit the coup de grace and Cole kicked out, and they're like, "Oh, nobody's ever kicked out of that before." And then
I want to touch on that.
Somebody kicked out before.
Well, no, I was going to ask you only because I don't know. I figured you might be more knowledgeable on that. Has anyone kicked out of the coup de grace before?
On WWE television, I'm not sure. Which is the only thing that matters. The independents don't matter. It's all about WWE, isn't it? So, but later on in the match, Cole hit his last shot and Finn kicked out of that. So, yeah, I mean, they were both, putting over how tough the guys were and how both of them were really digging deep, wanting to be champion again. So, yeah, I thought that was quite good from the commentators, like putting over how the guys were digging deep to try and get that win.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was looking up. I was trying to see. So apparently Kevin Owens kicked out of it when they did the Beast in the East WWE Network special back in the day. But I guess because it wasn't a main show or pay-per-view, it was just a WWE Network special, they don't count it. Apparently Joe kicked out at a takeover. So, okay. So interesting enough. And always when they say something like that, like no one has ever done it, the first thing I thought is, I bet someone has.
Yeah.
Now, granted, both those moments I imagine were a long time ago. And it's just a small thing. But at the same time, if you have people that truly follow the product and are really into it, I don't like throwaway lines like that, because I feel like it undermines the reality that you're trying to build. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, well, you're sensationalizing something that isn't true just to try to get people more excited about it. When in actuality, it was just as exciting to see him kick out. Like, and it could have been as simple as they could have just asked a question like, oh man, has anyone kicked out of that? I don't know. I'd say, I don't remember. That would have been fine versus them just blatantly saying, no one ever did this, when in actuality it makes you kind of look like a dummy because you didn't do your homework. But I digress. That's such a nitpicky thing, and it didn't necessarily take away from the emotional context of the match itself. But anyway, I'm sorry, I cut you off.
Yeah, I like how Finn had to bust out the 1916 from the top rope to get the win. So it kind of in a way protects Cole. It doesn't make him look weak after kicking out the Coup de Grace. It took a huge move to put him away.
Right. And I really appreciated the selling and the storytelling here, because I know when he hit it earlier in the match, they had put over his foot was injured, and then he was selling after he hit the move, and it was some really good work here. It was good, really good working. And matches like this do make me wonder. I'm sure they had their spots, certain spots that they had planned into it, but these guys, being veteran wrestlers, I have to imagine some of the graps that they did in there probably was just working in the ring, and you could tell these guys, well, actually, I can't say that. I was about to say you could tell these guys have worked each other before, but then again, I really don't know. It could have been just simply their experience as wrestlers and just were able to work with each other very well. But that being said, I thought it was a really well worked match. They told some good stories, especially with the ankle being hurt, but Finn Balor overcame the odds. And that's always good too. When you have a babyface win, you always want to have some kind of being able to topple a mountain. And so for Finn Balor, the mountain that he was toppling was fighting through his ankle injury to still become the NXT champion. And Adam Cole, I agree. I don't think he took any lowering in status off this loss. And that's also a great thing in wrestling, if you can have a match where both competitors end up being elevated by the end versus anyone, being lowered. And I think this happened here, despite the fact that, Adam Cole lost. I don't think he lost any steam. And if anything, based on what we saw later in the show and his reaction to Finn, this was actually an opportunity for him to grow as a character and thus, in my opinion, get more over, because it's that emotional context and it's that character growth that really helps fans identify with the wrestlers and build that emotional connection. And so I thought for Adam Cole, this was actually a good step forward for him as a character as well on this show. We go from Finn Balor winning to Rhea Ripley promises to hurt Mercedes Martinez in the steel cage tonight. So good, they went ahead and put over the main event. Backstage, Finn gets congratulated by Triple H, various wrestlers, and even Adam Cole. Finn gets interviewed and says this is why he returned to NXT. So good, everyone putting it over. And I like the wrestlers and Triple H putting it over backstage, because it implies the importance of the championship and what it means not only to Finn, but for NXT as a whole. And again, this was a good character building moment for Adam Cole to show a little bit of hints of a babyface turn. Then we have Robert Stone pulls Mackenzie Mitchell aside to brag about finding Shotzi's tank. Shotzi shows up and levels him. Aliyah gets involved, but ends up crashing into Io Shirai in the middle of a photo shoot. Io chases her to the ring where Shotzi's waiting. They both beat up Aliyah. Robert Stone goes up top. Shotzi saves Io, then hits him with a shot. Io and Shotzi go up and hit Stone and Aliyah with moonsault and senton. They high five. Shotzi hands Io the title, but pulls it back and laughs. Io snatches it, shoots her a dirty look before saying, "Don't make me hurt you." What do you think the business of this segment was?
Just setting up a challenger for Io Shirai's women's title, which is looking like Shotzi. Really been enjoying Robert Stone and his antics with Shotzi Blackheart getting run over by the tank. Because that tank, even though it looks, quite small, I imagine with her inside it, it's quite heavy. So,
right.
Fair play to him getting run over, and he keep getting his legs crushed by that tank. Always pops me. But, like you say, it was just a little bit of a MacGuffin, if you will, to get to the eventual stare down at the end. So, it's looking like Shotzi might be getting a title shot in the near future.
Perhaps, although, and I'm not opposed to doing this occasionally too. This could be what I call a red herring, or basically making people think we're going to go this direction, but in actuality, they might swerve another way. Although I'm certainly okay if they do go forward with Shotzi Blackheart as well. But I have a feeling that Robert Stone and Aliyah aren't finished with Shotzi Blackheart. And this may be a catalyst for that. I could foresee something where Shotzi does get the championship match, and we assume that's the business, but in actuality, it's just a mechanism for Robert Stone and Aliyah to interfere and cost her the match and cost her the championship, which then heightens the emotional context and the heat for Robert Stone and Aliyah, because now they've cost her a championship. They cost her ability to be able to make herself a star and to be able to provide for her family. Now it's more emotion. And in that sense, Shotzi needs to find a way to go over on, or really get some revenge on Robert Stone and Aliyah versus just going after a championship. And sometimes that, from a character standpoint, can be more meaningful than necessarily just winning a title. That could be interesting. I could foresee something where maybe where Shotzi's in the middle of a match, and then they go to a shot in the parking lot with Robert Stone, and he blows up the tank or something like that. Now, obviously, I think at some point they'd have to rebuild and get her a new tank, because I think that's a great part of her gimmick. But I could see something like that would be like, whoa, like now he's crossed the line. You know what I mean? But anything with Robert Stone, I'm pretty much a fan of. I think he does great character work, and I'm always entertained anytime he's on my screen. And this was no exception. I didn't notice, but apparently my wife did that. The outfit that Aliyah wore was very interesting as well. She was like, "Who's Judy Jetson?" Because it looked almost like she was wearing a spacesuit or something. But this was good, and it'll be interesting to see where they go with it. I think there's a couple directions they could, whether it's just with Io and Shotzi. But I still have a feeling, though, that Robert Stone and Aliyah probably aren't finished with Shotzi just yet, based on what we saw here. But either way, the segment I thought was entertaining. I thought all this worked. It was good stuff. At least I was concerned. It looks like next we go to the Gargano's home. Candice and Johnny seem to have different opinions on Tegan Nox showing up. She likes this friendship, but Johnny seems against it. Tegan walks in, and Johnny immediately questions her bringing pizzas to Mia Yim's house a while back, and they're going to talk after a break. And we'll get into more of the meat of this as we go forward, because they kind of did a few different segments throughout the show, which I liked. I liked that this kind of built up. Now, I do have different opinions on the execution, and we'll get into that a little bit. And again, it's more so because I want to see these guys and gals get more out of their characters and be able to get more over. But this setup worked. This was intriguing. It made me interested in what we're going to see later in the show, and so this was a good lead into what ultimately we would see as far as that dinner goes. Then we get Timothy Thatcher and the Thatch's Thatch Can. He uses footage to discuss the problems with Damian Priest's offense. Did you get a chance to see this pre-tape?
I did. Yep. Good stuff. Saying that when he's posing, try and go for him. Look at how he leaves his feet. When you're on your feet, you're in control. It was all logical stuff. It was, from a teaching point of view, which is the character when he's doing them vignettes, he's teaching a class. It makes perfect sense.
Yeah. And to me, this might sound weird, I see Timothy Thatcher, at least in this particular situation, and that's where one thing I love about him is he is always Timothy Thatcher. He does not change his character, whether he's going against the heel or babyface. But in this situation, to me, I feel like he's for sure the babyface. I mean, he's not being cocky. He's being very methodical about the way he does things. And this, I thought, got him over tremendously. I thought this was an incredible piece of production. I think this was the best piece of production on the show, to be honest with you, as far as all the pre-produced segments. This I thought, in the less than minute, or it might have been a minute, that they gave him, it told all the story. It made me interested and emotionally invested in wanting to see this match. And I'm very much looking forward to it. I don't know, did they say when that match is going to happen? I don't know if they did or not. I don't know if it's going to happen next week. But either way, I'm interested. But I thought this little promo here was great stuff. I'm very interested, like I said, to see where they go with Timothy Thatcher. And then we have next, we'll just say the man who must not be named. He got a squash match against Ashante the Adonis. This was pretty quick. At least they gave Adonis a short chance to kind of have back and forth verbally with the man that must not be named. But they did put the man that must not be named over, put him down with the DDT pretty quick. But then we saw KUSHIDA making his return after a few weeks away, after the man that must not be named, not Voldemort, the purple guy. We'll call him the purple guy. Got some revenge for Big Purple beating him up a few weeks ago. KUSHIDA pulls at Dream's arm and rams his shoulder into the ring post several times. Athers, what do you feel? Well, obviously the business here was built.
Setting up a match with KUSHIDA. Yeah, it'd be a good match. I mean, regardless to my feelings towards Velveteen Dream, yeah, he's a good wrestler. So very charismatic. KUSHIDA, good wrestler, very good technically. It'll be a good clash of styles.
Regardless on feelings on him, I'm just hopeful that this will be a good opportunity to help elevate KUSHIDA. I think he's a hell of a hand. I had the good fortune to get a chance to work with him literally over 10 years ago when he was on his own dime flying over to get experience. Like he flew in just to get a chance to ride around with Eugene Nick Dinsmore, who's a great wrestler as well, and just kind of learn more of the American style of wrestling. And so he's someone that's completely dedicated to the craft, super passionate about it. Otherwise, for at least from the one time I worked with him, met him, it seemed like a otherwise good guy. And I'm excited to see him get an opportunity on a bigger stage. And I'm just hopeful this feud and story as it proceeds will be an opportunity for him to get over and grow as a character and give him a shot, an opportunity to get over. So that being said, I thought this worked. Would you say are you in agreement with that you felt the segment worked as far as creating interest in KUSHIDA getting his revenge?
Oh yeah, most definitely. I mean, I might be grasping at straws with this one, but I get the feeling that a lot of people, they're recording their shows at Full Sail, right, still? Or is it the Performance Center?
It beats me. I feel like it's the Performance Center, but I could be wrong. I really don't know. Let me see if it's
wherever they're filming it. I've got the feeling that the NXT trainees that are watching it, they're kind of a similar mindset to myself when it comes to Dream, because I noticed during the North American title match that whenever he did anything in the match, there was no reaction. It wasn't a face reaction or a heel reaction. It was more or less met with indignant silence. So I don't know if there's heat. Yeah, I don't know if there's like heat within the locker room there with him or whatever. It might be me, just my imagination, but I didn't think there was much reaction for him tonight either. And I thought that KUSHIDA, when he came down, he got a good ovation for hanging him up in that arm bar between the ropes. I thought that got a pretty good pop from the crowd.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. I'm going to have to keep an extra. Keep an extra ear. I'm going to have to listen carefully because I didn't pick up on that, but you may be onto something. I'm going to have to now go back and just listen to it. But that is interesting. And if the allegations that they presented for Purple Guy, if they are true, I don't blame him one bit. I'd feel the same way. I'd be half tempted if it didn't get me fired to just turn my back when he came out to wrestle, because you're right. Any kind of reaction puts him over, whether it's heat or popping for something. So that is an interesting point, and I'm gonna have to, like I said, make it a point to try to listen more closely for that. But again, if that is the case, then I think that's very telling as well. We'll see what happens. I digress. Next, we have a vignette of Fandango talking about the tag team titles. Fandango says his belt smells like gold, baby oil, and success. Imperium also speaks, saying Breezango are jokes who made a mockery of the titles, and their rematch is next Wednesday. Imperium says it will be history for the shortest NXT tag title reign in history.
Fandango in this promo is absolute gold. Like the opening few seconds, he goes to throw the title on his shoulder, and kind of drops it behind him. He's like, oh, just like the absolute. I think the word is it himbo. Like a male bimbo. Like, I think his character's just fantastic.
Yeah, I agree. They do really good stuff, and it's crazy to me not guess crazy that, but at least based on their last big run as Breezango on the main roster, I felt like and keep in mind, this was at a time when I really didn't start watching a lot of wrestling regularly again until I started doing podcasting with Tommy Media here. Just because working in OVW and helping to manage that company, it was pretty much took all my attention to do the things I needed to do there. But I do remember, despite that, seeing, skits with Breezango and with at the time the Ascension, and it seemed like, at least from what I could tell, it was getting over. Now, again, my opinion may be biased because working with Victor or APOC, for so long, I'm conscious that, sometimes I'm more biased towards my friends that are on there, but I thought they did really good work. So I guess more so surprising that they, that they didn't, I guess, go on to stay on the main roster. But I'm also, just like we talked about AJ Styles joining NXT and Finn Balor joining NXT, I think bringing these guys from the main roster down to work with the other guys is a great thing. And so it'll be interesting to see what happens. Are you hoping next week to see Imperium get the titles back, or do you want to see Breezango continue on as the champs? There's no wrong answer. I'm just curious.
I'd like to see them retain, and I'd like to see Imperium go to NXT UK, because I think that NXT UK is going to need, especially in the tag team division, some names. Because I think as far as tag team goes, that's probably NXT UK's weakest kind of area at the minute. They've got plenty of single guys. They've got a decent women's division. People like Kaylee Ray, Toni Storm. It's definitely the tag team division that needs beefing up a bit. And I think there's no better team to have than Imperium. They're fairly locally based. They're from Europe, so obviously I think travel wouldn't be an issue once they got over. As I said a few weeks ago, when they did come over, they'd probably have to quarantine for a few weeks. Mm-hmm. But you don't have to sling them in there straight away. You can introduce them later on in the tapings. And yeah, I think having somebody that's been a former NXT proper, if you will, tag team champions would add a bit more prestige to the NXT UK division.
Yeah, I agree, especially having been to NXT and holding the championships. I agree. It helps to elevate, more interest in NXT UK, which sometimes, I'll be honest, sometimes I feel like it's like their redheaded stepchild, in that it seems like they don't get the attention that I feel like the other brands necessarily do. That being said, the whole shame of it, being in the time of a global pandemic is how cool would it be to kind of flip around your idea if it was something where Imperium got the titles back, but then said, you know what, we're tired of being in the United States. If you all want these tag team titles, you can come to the UK, and then bring Breezango over to work around there for a little bit and beef up the tag division there too. And then you have 2 more tag teams to help elevate the rest of them. And then it makes people, if they want to see the NXT tag team titles get defended, then they have to watch NXT UK, and then you finally have the story come around where Breezango gets the titles back, bring them back to NXT, and then that would be an interesting crossover. And literally, I'm just spitballing here, but I think something like that would be something to help elevate the NXT UK brand, make it more of, you can't miss, you have to watch TV, and not just, well, if you're a fan of UK wrestling, you can watch this show. You know what I mean? And I admit that I haven't seen as much as I would like, and my good friend Chris Sharp Package, referee over there. I see his stuff that he posts, but I really don't get a chance otherwise to watch a lot of the stuff. And from what I understand, they got some really good talents over there. So I would like to see them get more of the spotlight and more finding a way to entrench them into some of the main stories that they're trying to tell, whether it's with NXT or just as part of being with the WWE brand as a whole. But then again, I do also know the last few months they've had to take off because of the pandemic and everything. But with them hopefully now starting to pick up a little bit, things will kind of pick up for them as well, as far as putting more marketing and advertising behind them and making people more interested in the brand again. What do you think really needs to happen for the brand to really start, I guess, making more headlines, I guess, or creating more interest?
It's very difficult to say.
I know it's a big ask.
For starters, get rid of people that have been accused of doing terrible things.
Right.
Because NXT UK have let go several referees.
I was gonna say, I know they got rid of some, but there's still others. You're saying that?
Yeah, they got rid of 2 referees, and they got rid of Travis Banks and Ligero. These guys that came out, admitted what they've been accused of doing, and they were gone. There's still other names. I'm not going to name them for legal reasons, because there's actually a British female wrestler who has accused one of them of sexual harassment, and she's currently being sued by said individual.
Oh my God.
And she's had to put a GoFundMe on to pay for her legal fees. I know who the guy is, but I'm not going to mention it, because obviously he's lawyering up. So
yeah, and he doesn't deserve to be put over. But let me ask you.
He's somebody that's very prominent on the show as well. Again, I'm not going to name names, but when you've got people like that are still, openly employed by WWE, it kind of puts you off watching the product a little bit.
Yeah, it makes you wonder, what else, might be going on. But let's spin around into a positive. Can you see anyone that is on the UK wrestling scene that maybe has not been given a shot on the NXT UK roster that you might like to see come in to help fill in the gaps and replace those that otherwise should be replaced?
There's a guy who's the current Progress Wrestling champion. He's called Cara Noir, and his gimmick is basically he is the Black Swan. I don't know if you've seen the film Black Swan.
I have not, unfortunately, but I'm familiar with it, but I haven't seen it.
He comes out to the Swan Lake theme music, and he's got his white face paint and like a black swan thing on his face. And he comes wearing this silver mask, and he takes it off, and he's got this very dramatic entrance. And he's got like the feathers and then a big cape and everything. And yeah, his entrance is quite the spectacle. And
does he have his own entrance music, or is this
no? It's literally the theme to Swan Lake. It's literally the theme to Swan Lake.
So I know that would be probably one of the big things, though, unless WWE is willing to shell out the money for it. Because I do hate whenever they have to bring someone in and then they switch it up. Like I think it happened to didn't happen. I think he'd be. Like I think it'd be okay because it's classical music and okay. So
they use Imperium's music that Imperium used when they were known as Ring Camps over in Europe. So I can't see that being a massive problem.
Okay, yeah. Obviously, if it's something like I know, like Daniel Bryan has the Flight of the Valkyries and something like that, that's beyond the copyright laws. That's free use.
Somebody else who I think it'd be a really good fit is a young high flyer called Robbie X. He's been wrestling for 12 years and the dude's only 23.
Wow.
The guy is phenomenal. He's really, really fast, really quick. If you're into the flippy shit style of wrestling, then you really, really would love Robbie X. He's a hell of a talent. And like I say, he's a 12-year veteran at the age of 23. He was involved in a World of Sport when that got recorded over here. That seems to have gone very, very quiet. And Robbie X is somebody I think would be a very interesting fit at NXT UK.
Yeah, so you bring up something that's interesting, at least to me, because I know a couple of talents that have had a chance to get into wrestling earlier than the age of 18, which is pretty much at least in the United States, is kind of the standard for being able to do it legally. And as a healthcare provider and a physical therapist, I want to agree with that, because I think as your body's growing to be able to take all that impact and potentially hurt yourself at a younger age, can be detrimental. With that said, on the other side of the coin, and this is where I'll contradict what I just said. I've seen some of these talents that do start early, and we know, when you start to learn things at an earlier age, like, learning another language or learning a new skill, that it's, you're able to pick those things up much earlier when you're younger. But I've seen some incredible talents that have started younger, and it does seem like that it does really make a difference as far as their ability to really get it. We have a kid here in Kentucky, Indiana area by the name of Corey Storm, and he, I think he did something similar to what the Hardy Boys did, and had built his own ring in his backyard at like 14 years old and started training and then started, getting into shows in Indiana. And I think, don't quote me on this, I think he fibbed about his age and was able to start getting work, before, years before he really should have been. But he's really picked it up. I mean, he's still got a little ways to go, but he's a kid. I think I mentioned Corey Storm. I think he'll get, I think you'll see him also around on one of the major companies in the next 2 to 3 years, simply because he gets it far more. Like when he came in at 18 years old to OVW, I was shocked at how natural he seemed. But I think part of that was just when you start training early like that and really understand the mechanics of how to move inside a ring, it makes a heck of a difference. So it's interesting. I'll have to check out this guy, Robbie X. In fact, I'd be curious to see how much his wrestling resembles that of the kid I was just mentioning, because I'm sure probably based on having that early experience, it probably has, helped him to really grow as a wrestler and be able to really grasp the mechanics of what needs to be done in a wrestling match. We're back at the Gargano house where Johnny flat out says it was an awkward dinner. He steps away after realizing he probably was the cause. Candice wants Tegan to admit her mistakes, and Tegan says she was the one who betrayed her. Candice mentions the pizza thing. Tegan brings up her friend being put through a table. Tegan says Johnny seems to be changing her, but Candice says this is who she's always been. Candice says that she's the big sister who has never taken her down a bad path, so why would she start now? And Tegan seems to be thinking it over. What are your thoughts on this, Athers?
Yeah, I mean, Johnny Gargano's a nerd to start with. I thought he was just a massive nerd all the way through this, from opening the door with the whole high five too slow gimmick. And yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'll be honest, I wasn't massively a fan of all these segments, but I understand what they were trying to do. I understand where they were going to and what business it was trying to do. Yeah,
it was clearly the next step in the journey, so to speak, as far as the scene goes. Did you like Gargano's work, or did you think it was too cheesy?
I just think that's who he is now, to be honest. I think it's fitting with his character, but yeah.
And I agree with that. It was cheesy, but in my opinion, in a good way. Like I thought he played up that character really well. Like he was almost over trying to be friendly, but you could see right through it, and that was good.
Disingenuous.
Yes, and it came across that way. I think he came across exactly like how he should have. Like he was that's the perfect word, actually, disingenuous. And so I thought his character work was really good. I thought Candice was pretty decent. I'll be honest, man. I think she has some great talent, but I'm still not convinced, at least from a character standpoint, that Tegan Nox really has a grasp on who she is as a character. And whoever wrote the line for her to tell Candice, "You betrayed me," I was not a fan of that line, because I can't think in any natural human conversation where I've seen someone go, "You betrayed me." Like, to me, that's such a over the top thing to say. Like, that it didn't come across as natural at all. It felt like a very forced line. And as soon as she said that line, I was immediately taken out of it. I think really Tegan needs to really figure out who she is as a character, and whether that's, literally every single day. And sometimes you have to do this, get in front of the mirror and cut promos until either you make yourself, cry or laugh or feel some sort of really visceral, strong emotion, or hate to say it, but get an outside acting coach to work with you and learn how to produce scenes. And actually, that's not a bad idea, because I will say, at least for me, I have a much harder time acting from a script. I can do it now, but that was a real big struggle for me, was having to read lines. Unfortunately, I haven't had to do it too many times, but I do find that is much more difficult than just reacting naturally. But unfortunately, in WWE, it's all, at least verbally, it's all written out by the writers, and so you have to learn that skill. And so it would definitely behoove her to learn that more, because she can be the best women's wrestler in the world, but if she can't properly cut a promo and create emotional investment in what she's doing in that ring, as good as it is, she'll never be a top tier superstar. And I want her to be one. I'm not saying that she can't do that. I think she could be a top tier superstar, but she has to grasp who she is as a character and really be able to deliver those promos. It doesn't even mean she has to cut the best promos in the world, but she has to be able to cut a promo or talk in a sense that makes people believe what she's saying is true. And unfortunately, I did not get this from her in this scene. Does that make sense? Do you feel I'm
yeah, totally.
Okay.
No. I totally get what you're saying. And yeah, promo's never been like the strongest aspect of her work, but I'm sure she'll get there in the end.
Yeah. And that's why she's here in NXT. They're all there to, continue to grow and learn and hopefully as time goes on. And I think having the feud with Candice is going to be helpful because Candice is someone that has a bit more character. And I think having Johnny Gargano, in the scenes with her, hopefully, helped her to kind of drive more character a little bit. So hopefully this will continue to help and she'll continue to grow and learn and again, come to understand who she is as a character. And that's something that unfortunately every wrestler has to figure out themselves. There's no black and white answer for everybody. It's all on a case by case and an individual basis. And I hope in her case, again, because of how talented she is, I hope she is able to find that. That being said, speaking of finding things, we find Bronson Reed is on quite the roll as he takes on Austin Theory next. They have a 10-minute match, and it ends with Bronson Reed nailing the Tsunami for the win. Athers, what do you feel the business of this match was?
Two main things. I think one is continuing Bronson Reed's push, if you will. Two, I think it's a little bit of a payback / punishment for Austin Theory for his discretion, shall we say.
Yeah. And that may be the case. And I will say, at least from a writing standpoint, in my opinion, you should never necessarily book for that reason. Like I hope the business was, hey, we need to find a spot on the show to bury or to punish Austin Theory. I hope it was more so, hey, this guy is someone we can utilize to help elevate Bronson Reed. But at the same time, we're not going to, put the spotlight on him necessarily because it's really more about Bronson Reed. So I hope the business was more about Bronson Reed and this Austin Theory was a means to an end.
It was just with the match being kind of like 65-35. Do you know what I mean? I thought that while Theory got a little bit in.
That's very specific, but I love it though because in wrestling, just to peel the curtain back a little bit, like as if we're giving guys, how to work a match, they'll always say, do you want us to keep it? And usually it's, either 50-50, 60-40, 70-30. It's usually in tens. I like how specific you got there though. It's 65-35. Very, very analytical. Yeah. And this is why we pay you the big bucks, Athers, just so you know. Anyway, I digress.
Yeah, it wasn't quite a squash, but yeah, it was. He went over pretty strong.
Yeah. And I will say, I feel like Bronson Reed the last few weeks, I could be wrong, and tell me if you feel the same way. I feel like his intensity has picked up a little bit. Like I feel like when I first started reviewing this show, I thought he seemed like he moved well in the ring and seemed to have potential, but I just didn't get that intensity. I didn't believe necessarily that he was in there to maim his opponents and try to get a victory. Now I do. And I don't know what flipped the switch. If someone pulled him aside, I was watching, I'm always behind on everything, interview from, I think, last year's that Steve Austin did with Kane, and how when Kane came in as, Isaac Yankem, I think it was Undertaker that pulled him aside and said, hey man, if you want to stick around, you got to pick up that intensity. And that really helped him to pick up the intensity and what they saw the potential in him. And then we know what happened. He turned into Kane later. So I'm wondering and hopeful that maybe someone pulled Bronson aside and say, hey man, you move really well in the ring. You've got what it takes, but if you want to get over, you got to bring that intensity. And so I think he started to bring it a little bit more, because the way I saw it first, he's like a big friendly teddy bear, but he can wrestle good too. Now I see him as someone that could be a contender. Do you think this worked? Do you think this got Bronson Reed over?
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, he's not averse to going to the outside and hitting moves, so I wouldn't say that call him a rule breaker per se, but kind of staying on his man type thing. And the last thing I'd want in wrestling is to get splashed by Bronson Reed, because that dude's big.
Absolutely. Oh, I apologize. I have not been doing my due diligence and going back to checking the chat room. We got a few comments here from one Daniel Price. Think that Daniel usually tunes in here. Appreciate you tuning in here. I want to go back through some of his comments because we do try to be interactive as well. So certainly if you're watching this as a download and you get a chance to ever join us, we do this every Thursday 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Usually we're a little later today. But anyway, so some of the Daniel's comments here said they won't do it. Vince didn't think Imperium was over enough with casuals to keep them on. Okay, so I guess it's about the titles. Let's see. Savage got away with pomp and circumstance, and Flair used the 2001 Space Odyssey theme. So yeah. I haven't been. I got to keep up with these comments. These were probably 20 minutes ago. Train of Ted thought derailed always. It's the nature of having ADD. It's part of lifestyle. Having a dinner party doesn't make me think, oh man, I've got to see this because it's going to be great. That's true. It was an interesting mechanism for the story. I'll say it was at least different, but yeah, you don't think necessarily advertising a dinner party is must see TV necessarily. And then he said they're definitely making an example out of Theory. WWE is petty like that, and we were just going over that as well. So maybe Hans's prediction will come true, and we'll see Bronson Reed, which I'll be all about. I think now that would be something that I will feel like a match between those two. Finn would be able to elevate both of them in that kind of match with Finn, going toe to toe with a monster, and Bronson Reed. I don't foresee them necessarily putting the title on him yet, and I actually don't think they should. Because part of it is in the journey and getting the championship too early, then where do you go from there, especially as a babyface? But I think, him working into an opportunity to work with Finn Balor going toe-to-toe for, 15 to 20 minutes and looking like he could beat him, but then Finn Balor just beats him in the end with experience. I think that elevates both wrestlers. And so I don't know if they're going that way, but if Han's prediction is true, then I have no problem with it. I think it would be a good match. What do you think?
Yeah, like you say, credible first title defense, especially with him having a bit of momentum behind him at the minute.
Well, we go on backstage. Adam Cole's being interviewed about his loss. He's disappointed, but admits this was the thing that was really telling to me. The better man won. As soon as he said that, my first thought was he's turning babyface for sure. Again, I could always be wrong, but that one line I felt like told me everything. As soon as he admitted Finn was the better man, because as a heel, you always find some way to find that you're better. Like, like I was just off tonight or whatever. He had no excuse, and he just admitted that Finn was better. And I was like, okay, so they're turning baby face. And again, I'm okay with that, and I'll be very interested to see how they play that out as they go forward. Mercedes Martinez says she finds the strongest and toughest to take him out. That's who Rhea is, and she won't stop until there's nothing left to her. This was just a quick little promo. It was another way to hype their cage match coming up, and I thought it was fine. Did you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, just keeping the main event in the front of your mind kind of thing before they go to the next segment.
Absolutely. Daniel Price in the chat room says, let him simmer 4 to 6 more months, and if he works out, put the North American title on him. I like that. And that's again part of the journey of attaining a title. And that's where I think sometimes as fans, as people who maybe, aren't thinking from a story standpoint, it can be frustrated when they see a wrestler's really good. And they're like, why don't they put the title on him? But they don't realize when you put a title on a babyface, where do you go from here? And you actually get babyfaces more over when they have to go through more of a journey to finally attain championship gold. Now you can go too long with, them, almost getting there and then losing and almost getting there to losing. And once you cross, that mountain of going too far, then it's hard to get them back over. But the more you can create the chase and the illusion of, them trying to overcome every obstacle to get it, and the more you can stretch that out, the more truly it gets them over rather than putting a title on them quickly. Because as much as people may think putting a title on someone puts them over, it doesn't. It's the context of getting that championship and what it means to that individual that really gets them over rather than the championship itself, in my opinion anyway. As we proceed, though, we have more in-ring action. Killian Dane versus Roderick Strong. Not too long of a match, about 7.5 minutes. It led to Bobby Fish pulling Roderick Strong to safety, allowing Strong a distraction to hit the jumping knee to win. Afterwards, Undisputed Era jumped Killian Dane until Drake Maverick shows up with a bat to even the odds. However, Fish chop blocks him to take him down, but Killian Dane gets the bat and chases them off. Dane drops the bat and goes to leave, but Drake wants a handshake. Instead, Dane levels Drake. Athers, what do you feel the business was here, my friend?
They're just furthering the very bizarre relationship between Maverick and Killian Dane. I've absolutely no idea where this is going. I'm smelling maybe an odd couple tag team, an uneasy alliance.
Yeah.
Which eventually ends with Dane tolerating Maverick.
Yeah. I think the same thing. I was talking a little bit last week, is I felt like it was leading this direction, and they had a thing. I think I was just on a YouTube. I don't think they had it on the actual show, where apparently they are going to be a tag team next week against Riley and Fish. So that will be, at least temporarily, they'll be a tag team. But I'm kind of feeling the same thing. I'm feeling like they're pairing them together as kind of the odd couple team. What are your thoughts on that? Do you feel like they can work as a team, or do you feel it feels too forced, or anything in between?
Remains to be seen. I'll give it a chance. Big man, little man tag team. So see where it goes, I guess.
Right. Then obviously, and this is where, again, I'll admit my bias, having worked with Spud and OVW and being at least friendly acquaintances with him, hung out a few times, and I think he's a hell of a talent. I think this has the potential, though, to be really good. And they're so different, not just the size difference, but like, I feel like you have Drake Maverick, who's like, he's a good looking young man, who cleans up well. And then you have Killian Dane, who looks more, very, very brutish and, a bit more unkempt. He's got the hairy arms and the beard and everything, and just has just a different disposition about him as well. Character wise, he's kind of more just kind of like, just seems just very kind of angry and, very, very short with his words, whereas Drake Maverick's, more of the talker, lively, bubbly type personality. So, and the more that they contrast, I feel like the more it works. So I think there is a lot of potential here. And this might be, what Drake really needs to break out of just being, what I would call a utility character. And that's just really being a character to help get other characters over, which he's great at. And it's good to have those kind of individuals on your roster. But again, with my personal bias, I would love to see him get more of an opportunity, because I think he absolutely can deliver. And I think, potentially being in a tag team with Killian Dane also helps to beef up the tag team division. And I think they could do some really entertaining things together. But as we said, it remains to be seen. So we'll see where they go with it. But I think at least potentially, there's at least from my end, I'm interested to see where they go from here. And I think there could be some really good stuff. All right, we finally have the final scene at the Gargano house. Candice and Tegan cheers to the friendship, and Candice being the next NXT Women's Champion. Tegan questions this, but Candice says that she had her chance. Tegan reminds her that she has also never beaten Io. So Candice throws the salad bowl on her, and Tegan throws food back. Johnny comes over and calls Tegan a piece of garbage and that he's never understood a word she said. Tegan says, F you, and dumps a bowl of pasta on his head. Candice throws something at Tegan, but Tegan ducks, and it breaks their TV as Tegan runs out of the house. All right, Athers, what are your thoughts on this final scene for the dinner party?
I think we went all the way around the houses just to establish they're not friends anymore.
Yeah. Do you think this worked?
For me personally, no, but I could see what they were trying to do.
Yeah.
So the effort was there. I'm not going to, rag on them for effort, but I thought the writing wasn't the best and the delivery wasn't the best from everybody. But, it is what it is. And we've got to the conclusion that they're no longer friends. So I'm sure that they'll have a match somewhere down the line.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. So there's two. We already talked a little bit about Tegan really needing to find herself as a character, and that was, again, present here. Whoever was producing this, you have to go back and watch the scenes. And maybe I was looking too critically or too closely at this. I don't know if you picked up on it, but when Candice threw food at Tegan Nox, it was, at least to me, it was clear. Tegan was cheesing throughout that scene. Like, she had a half a smirk, and then literally, now they cut quickly, fortunately, but you could tell as the food was falling on her. If you go and watch it, I think the segment's on YouTube. She clearly has a smile on her face because she was like giggling I'm sure at the concept of having food thrown on her. But to me, that just absolutely killed the scene. Like, to me, it was, at that point, it was okay. She's clearly not invested in the scene or really believes, in herself in the scene. She was, laughing at food being thrown on her, and the fact that whoever was working production, even though I know it would have been a mess to clean everybody up and do it again, and could have been a late night shoot, but you can't let something like that slide, because that just undermines. And part of me does want to say, Tegan needs to be better, but part of that needs to be on the producer too, because that undermines if these girls go and have a great match. Again, more character from Tegan Nox is going to help elevate that match, but leaving that scene in where she's clearly smiling at food being thrown on her is going to undermine everything they do in that ring now, in my opinion. Now, maybe other people didn't see it and maybe it wasn't as apparent, but it was apparent to me. And that took me out of the scene, as well as one of the last shots they show. And they should have just had Tegan leave off camera and not physically show her running out the front door, because that's your baby face. You just had the baby face clear as day running away from the heel. Now, granted, with Gargano and everything, she did need to make her exit, but I also didn't think we needed to get a full visual shot of her running out the front door, because to me it shows, okay, the baby face is scared of the heels, and I don't think really from a character standpoint you should ever show that unless it's something to where, clearly, they're about to put a hurt on her. Like, I think that could have been just an off-screen her leaving and not actually visually seeing her run out the front door. But again, sometimes I realize I get very nitpicky and maybe overly critical. So, and please, it wouldn't offend me at all if you told me so. Do you get a sense of that at all, or do you agree or disagree with that? Or I'm just curious, just on those points, what your thoughts are.
To be honest, I wouldn't have even noticed the whole face running away from the heels type thing. I just saw it as she doesn't live there, so she left. But I totally get what you're saying. Yeah.
And it's, again, I only bring it up because truly I want better for everybody, but in this particular instance for these women. And so I think those are just a couple choices that unfortunately kind of ruined the scene and what otherwise could have at least had more potential for character growth. And Tegan Nox, not knowing necessarily her character notwithstanding, those were production choices that could have been made better. In the chat room, Daniel Price said after Nox left, Gargano did a 10-bell salute to his TV. I would too. I was upset for them to see that TV getting broken, because I know to replace one of those would not be fun. I'm hopeful that it was a TV that was already broken and they just used it for the scene, but I was pretty heartbroken too. Our buddy from Australia, Piers Austin from the Wrestling with Tragedy podcast says, "Good day, mate." Man, it must be early morning there, I think, or late night, I believe. Always glad to have Piers join us as well. Daniel Price said, the face taking over the heels' house and making them look stupid would have been better. I agree. The good guy running away trashes the foil of it all. Yeah, if she could have, that would have been interesting too. She just starts destroying their house and they're like trying to stop things from breaking. And then she, waves by or something. That would have put over, and that would have been okay for Tegan. And that's where sometimes you, as a producer director, you have to understand. So if Tegan is cheesing her way through a scene, well, then let's utilize it. She starts, breaking stuff as, the Garganos are freaking out over her breaking her shit. Maybe even something because I'm the first person that'll stand up for any kind of abuse, whether it's to people or animals. But I know they had the dog in the scene, but maybe, of her talking down to the dog and implying mistreatment without actually showing or having the dog be abused. And then she takes her dog at the end and be like, I'm going to give this dog a good home. That's my dog. You know what I mean? And then that would have been, and that would have at least increased the stakes. And that would have been a whole nother, and that's where sometimes I go too campy with it. Maybe that would be too much, but anything that I feel like could have gotten more, I guess, of a reaction from the, basically showing that she's outwitted the heels and that, she saw through this plan. Cause I think everybody last week when the dinner party thing happened, could have seen, that this was very disingenuous a mile away. So I like that idea from Daniel as far as her being more of a foil and trashing the house. We're getting towards the end of the show here. We have Damian Priest interviewed, and he will defend his title against Timothy Thatcher next week. He calls Thatcher ugly and says he won't need to watch footage because he'll tell him what he's going to do, including kicking his ass. Any thoughts on this, Athers?
Not really. Just your standard promo of big meathead saying that he's going to kick his ass, really.
Right. Yeah, it was fine.
Confident champion.
Yeah, it wasn't. I wouldn't say it definitely wasn't bad. I would say it didn't necessarily stand out, but it served its purpose. And I think Damian Price, he's got a good presence about him. He talks very well, and this was a good way to hype a match and give people a reason to tune in the following week. I still think the one we saw from Thatcher earlier in the show was superior, but I also thought that was absolutely the best thing we saw on the entire show. And this wasn't pre-produced. This was just a backstage interview versus there is something to be said about having a segment pre-produced. Generally, unless you make production choices like the one we just saw, generally pre-production or post-production can work wonders on elevating a segment, and especially if the segment was already good. And Timothy Thatcher, I think, already is very good at how he presents his character, and that was just amped up a notch. But that being said, this wasn't by any means bad. It was a good way to hype that match as we move into the main event, a steel cage match between Mercedes Martinez and Rhea Ripley. These girls got a little chunk of time too, about 15 minutes. We saw Robert Stone try to interfere at one point, leading to Rhea Ripley grabbing him, and Mercedes Martinez used the opportunity to hit a net breaker off the top. Then they worked into the finish where they were on a turnbuckle with a table set up, and Rhea Ripley grabs Mercedes and hits the Avalanche Riptide. I didn't know what the move was called, and put her through the table for the 1, 2, 3 to win the match and cap off the show. So, what do you think, Athers? What was the business of this match?
Seeing who the dominant badass in the NXT female division is. I thought it was a very physical match. They both left it in the ring for me. Lots of hard-hitting stuff, like reverse electric chairs and really stiff spine busters. Both of these two didn't hold back. Good match, really good TV match. And credit to Mercedes Martinez for taking that riptide off the top rope through the table, because that didn't look fun.
It looked fun, but it looked at least from a bump standpoint, it looked safe. Like it looked like she, but I'm sure it did not feel good. It's one of those things where it hurts, but at least it was safe in the sense that I don't think, she risked any injury. Rhea took care of her and put her through properly. So a couple of things. So these girls worked their asses off, and it was fun to watch. That's no doubt. There were a couple of things, though, in my opinion, that if they were different, I felt like could have served the match better. Like one of the things I didn't understand was right off the bat, you had Rhea Ripley come after Mercedes Martinez and jump her from behind. Now, I am in agreement that I don't like people just black and white saying, well, these are heels of baby faces. I don't want to say, well, she's a baby face, she shouldn't do that. But in the context of this match, based on what we've seen, it seemed like Mercedes Martinez was the antagonist and Rhea Ripley's your protagonist. So that's where I didn't understand. You have your protagonist and the character that you want to get over and get people behind comes out and attacks the antagonist first and gets the jump on her. And the other part of me, and this might be just my more old school training, she hit her face against the cage several times before going in, and feel like at that point, the cage, it doesn't mean as much because you can take several shots and then go on and wrestle for 15 more minutes. You know what I mean? Like I'm very big on work into the cage. Take a minute. Maybe the first time she goes to ram, Mercedes Martinez into the cage. Of course, you don't see this, it really anymore at all. But like I'm big on, like, if I work a cage match and you go to throw me against the cage and I'm the heel and I put my hands up, I'm going to sell my hands like shit. Like that cage hurts before I even take a shot to the head. But we just went to 90, 180, just bam, head into the cage, bam, head in the cage, bam, head in the cage. I'm like, man, after all those headshots to the cage, you would think, you'd be out cold or concussed or anything, but no, you can wrestle for 15 more minutes. So that was just a choice I felt they made, that had they took it more time to work into the cage, not saying you can't do multiple shots, but I felt like when they did that at the beginning, it's like it made it mean less. And that's the thing, is they worked a really good hard fought match. And so I think it could have meant more had they worked into the cage instead of working it right away. And there was also a point in the match where I saw Mercedes Martinez like reversed Rhea Ripley and hit a fisherman spinebuster. And again, that was a small thing where I would have liked to have seen, Rhea Ripley pick up Mercedes, and instead of just slipping behind her and hitting the fisherman's, is Mercedes Martinez, finds a way to hook her, whether it's grabbing her hair, putting a thumb in the eye, or grabbing her tights or something to maneuver out of it and then hit it, just to get that little bit of extra heat and establish that she, again, not necessarily heel or baby face, but I'm just talking from a character standpoint, the antagonist and protagonist. But clearly she's the antagonist because she's cheating and finding ways to win, especially since we had Robert Stone trying to run interference and things like that. Like I felt like she would have garnered more heat just to do little things like that. And again, I'm not taking away from the performance of the match itself, because they worked their asses off, and truly, even though I'm being nitpicky about it, it was by no means a bad match. Just there were opportunities I felt like in those circumstances where they could have gotten more out of it, where they could have gotten more heat out of Mercedes, and they could have put over the match itself and the, I guess, the threat of the cage more. Because I felt like the threat of the cage was negated as soon as she smashed her head right away into it. Does that make sense, or am I off here? And it's okay to say because maybe, you know, from an old wrestling standpoint, you know, that's just a bygone way of thinking, and that's okay. So I don't know. What do you think about that? Do you think that makes sense, or do you think it was fine the way they did it? And I promise you won't offend me if you disagree.
No, you see, this is why I'm a fan and you're in the business. You brought things to light that I wouldn't have even thought of. Like, for example, like using the cage as a weapon outside the ring, kind of, and then we go on to have another 15 minutes. Yeah, it all makes perfect sense. I totally get what you're saying.
Yeah. With that being said, again, I thought this still elevated really both women still, and that's always a good thing when you can elevate both inside the ring. The interesting part, they didn't show it on TV, but there was a couple extra segments they did on YouTube where it looks like they're going to split Mercedes Martinez off. They actually had Robert Stone say that they were separating her from the brand, which I thought that was interesting. One, because I feel like that's something that should be on television, especially since that's a catalyst that could be a catalyst to other things that are meaningful. And two is I also feel like there's a lot more story to be told. If she is going to leave, that's fine. But I also feel like there's so much more story that can be told leading up to her leaving the Robert Stone brand than just she lost a match and now that's it. You know what I mean? And maybe there will be more to it. Maybe, you know, next week when, you know, she shows up, you know, she's going to, you know, get mad at him and they're going to continue that story down the road. But I just thought it was weird that the initial split anyway of him announcing that wasn't even on television. It was just on the YouTube page. It might have been on the network too, but I saw it on YouTube, and it was not, as far as I know, on the main show. Any thoughts in regards to that and Mercedes Martinez with the Robert Stone brand? If
they were going to do it, I'd have her leaving them. I'd say that Mercedes would be pissed off that he tried to interfere and cost her the match type thing. I don't know. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it didn't seem like they were clear either. Robert Stone made an off comment about saying nobody is bigger than the Robert Stone brand, and from this moment forward, we're cutting ties or something like that. So it wasn't exactly clear the catalyst necessarily, but interesting development nonetheless. So we'll be curious to see how things go. But again, I thought they did a great job, and anything involving Robert Stone, I'm always going to be a fan of just because I really like his character work. But that's it, man. That was the show. So from top to bottom. Did this show intrigue you and interest you enough to want to tune in next week to see what happens?
I'll be entirely honest. I've not watched NXT in quite a long time. This is the first time I've watched it, probably since TakeOver in Your House. And yeah, I thought it was a very good television episode. Lots of business got done, lots of business got finished, lots of business got begun. So yeah, I'll probably take a look next week and see what's going on.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it was well done, and I like hearing that. I really do love having people on the show that don't regularly watch, because to me that's the most telling, because I'm very big on, if someone tunes in for the first time or for the first time in a long time, what are you doing to not only educate them on what is happening, but more importantly, make them care about what is happening. And so I think that's telling, because, you know, I could say it felt that way till I'm blue in the face, but it really takes someone actually tuning in for the first time to be able to see that for themselves. And so I'm glad to hear that. It seemed like, having not tuned in for a while, you were able to get invested in the stories they were telling. And so in that sense, as a whole, I'd say the show's business got done, and that business being motivating the viewer to want to tune in the following week. And sure, there's nitpicky things that maybe could have either further heightened that emotional investment on the viewer's part, or to create it in the first place. But at the same time, as a whole, I think the performances were there. The writing pretty much was there. I feel like a couple production things could have been there, but as a whole, I think the show worked, and I am curious to see where they go from here. Daniel Price says, with how Ripley was acting at the end, it seemed like it was a send-off. Interesting. Did you get that vibe at all, Athers, that perhaps this was kind of a send-off for Ripley?
There's rumors that she could be one of the members of Retribution, so I don't know. But saying that there's about a cast of thousands that could possibly be in Retribution.
Sure.
They keep changing who's under the hood every single week, so who knows? I didn't catch that at the time, but yeah, maybe, could be right.
Yeah, because really at this point, I mean, the story with Mercedes is concluded. So unless they're moving her on to, say going after the women's title, which it seems like Io's tied up with other things, then potentially either, moving her back up to the main roster or being unveiled as a member of Retribution could be in the cards for her. But time will tell, because they could also next week spin her off into something different that we didn't even see coming this week. So either way, it will be interesting to see. You heard it here first. Daniel Price, I'll give you full credit. If this is Ripley's send-off in NXT, then you get the credit for calling that out, because I didn't necessarily pick up on that myself. But now that you say it, it certainly could be a possibility. With that said, of course, we've made it to the end of class. But before I dismiss everybody, we have to have our homework. And so, actually, let's go ahead and just base it off what we just saw. Actually, let's go ahead and do it for both women. I actually was going to originally do it for Mercedes, but since Daniel Price, the class can bring Daniel Price, I'm going to give a second part of the assignment. Ooh. No, it's all in good fun, because I more so because I want to hear everyone's creative ideas. So I want to know, both with Mercedes and Rhea Ripley, where do they go from here? And it's okay if you have an idea for one and not the other. I'd rather you just go ahead and send in your ideas either way, and that's okay. Maybe you have a good idea for Rhea Ripley. Maybe you have a good idea for Mercedes Martinez. I would definitely love to hear both, but either way, either for Mercedes, Rhea Ripley, or for both of them, where do they go from here? Either continuing on in NXT, going up to the main roster. Give me a reason to be interested in both of these women over the course of, say, the next month. You don't have to necessarily give me a week by week analysis, but in general, what are some things these women can do over the next few weeks to garner some more interest in their characters and to help get them over and give them an interesting story to work with? So creative freedom is on everyone, as always. There's no wrong answers. I'm curious to hear what you all think. And of course, you can send in your homework to nextlevelwrestlingreview@gmail.com. Let us know, Rhea Ripley, Mercedes Martinez, where do they go from here? Well, before we sign off, Athers, what are you working on this week? Anything you want to plug or put over, or just anything fun you got going on over there?
Yeah, this Saturday, Smack Attack, we're actually going to do a giveaway.
Whoa.
We're going to give away on the Smack Attack this Saturday. All you have to do to enter, well, I should probably tell you what you can win first. We're giving away a Walter 10 years WXW DVD signed by the man himself. Wow. Lots of matches from his time in WXW, taking on the likes of Tommy End, you may know now as Alistair Black, taking on guys like Chris Hero, Braniel Danielson. Loads of good matches on there. Ilya Dragunov, them two have had some great battles in the past. In fact, one of their matches just got uploaded to the WWE Network. They have a Progress World title match, which is very, very physical. So, yeah, all you have to do to win this DVD is, first of all, subscribe to Hacker Hameen via either Spotify, Podbean, Stitcher. They're on iHeartRadio now, I believe, as well.
Yep. iTunes as well.
Secondly, you got to subscribe, or follow, should I say, the Twitter account of Hammy Media Group and Smack Attack HMG. And thirdly, once the show comes out on Saturday, share it. And that's all you have to do to be in with a chance of winning it. And next week, we'll be reading out the winning entry on the show.
So you can get a great piece of merchandise exclusively signed, as well as some great matches that it'd be hard-pressed to find all in one spot anyway. Not to mention the fact that to participate, really, it's absolutely free. You just got to download the podcast, follow on Twitter, and see, my ADD is terrible. What was the third thing? Share it, right? Just share it.
Yeah, share it. Share the Saturday show.
See, look, the American education system working at its finest. Can you believe they gave me a doctorate degree? I promise I work with people better than I work with memorizing lists. Daniel Price says now they're going to TP my locker. Yeah, you gave everyone extra homework. Daniel, thank you for tuning in. Athers, thank you for joining us this morning, my friend. As we switch up
all.
September, I know it was a last-minute request to you. We appreciate you jumping on. I thought it was great having you. It was a good chance to just have an extended dialogue with you and talk some wrestling. You can also catch me on the Monday Locker Room as well as the Impact Attack. And as always, for any wrestlers that are watching, as well as if anyone has any business consulting needs or rehab needs, then you can always reach out to me at bookthedoctor@gmail.com. Be sure to tune in your homework. We want to know Rhea Ripley or Mercedes Martinez. What do we do with them? Send that into Next Level Wrestling Review at gmail.com. And with that being said, I hope everyone has a great rest of the week, and we will catch you next week for the Next Level Wrestling Review. Thanks for joining us.